Hey everybody, VideoFort Charlie here with another awesome Premiere tutorial for you. This time we're going to be going over the more important preferences that are available in Adobe Premiere. You'll notice that we've already gone through a few of these in previous tutorials, but when it comes to modifying anything in Premiere in depth, you'll definitely want to use the Premiere Preferences panel. So let's go ahead and go over changing label colors. You can click on Premiere Pro CC up here, go down to Preferences, and you'll notice that there's a bunch of different options here. Basically, they all live within the Preferences panel. So let's go ahead and start on clicking on General. You can see that it gives you some options straight up front. These are just general items that you can use. Now first let's go over changing label colors, because that's pretty useful. You can do that by clicking on Label Colors down here. And you'll notice that there are some colors as well as the names over here. Each of these can be customized to your particular needs. And to change the name, all you got to do is just click on any one of these names and you can modify that. So let's go ahead and change the second one to B-roll and make the color, it's kind of neon green. And click OK. Now you see that color's there. It's labeled B-roll. Now you can click on OK. So if we go into one of our sample sequences, you'll notice that actually the track itself has changed color because the label was already set to B-roll. If I change it to something else, the track color changes. You change to violet. It's actually good to have kind of a multicolor timeline so that you can know what kind of footage you have in your timeline without actually having to zoom in on it, look at the thumbnail, and do that whole method. I'm going to go back into the Preferences panel, click on Label Colors, and let's say that I want to change this to City Shots. I'm going to make this one red. Click on OK. Now let's just say I want to label all the city shots with that red color before actually putting it into the timeline. Because obviously I can go ahead and select the clip, right click, go to label, and then change it once it's in the timeline. But maybe I just want to do that all beforehand, save myself some work. Well, you can do that by going into your project panel over here, selecting whatever clips you'd like to change the label color, right clicking, and you'll see that there's a label tab down here, and I'm going to relabel all those to city shots because these are all city street shots. Now you'll notice that this little square over here changed. And this is an indicator of what the color actually is. So before you even go into the timeline, before you even double click on any of these clips, if you've labeled them with the proper colors, you can organize it all in advance. You should know what these are. Now if I click any one of these clips and I drag it into my timeline, you'll notice that it drags in red because it's already been pre-labeled and I already know what that is. So another helpful preference is a timeline setting called Timeline Playback Auto Scroll. Right now it's set to page scroll. You can select no scroll, you can select smooth scroll. There's a few different options here. You can select no scroll if you'd like for your timeline to remain still when your time indicator exits the page. So let's go ahead and hit OK. For example, if I zoom in here and I let the timeline play, you'll see my playhead indicator go off the actual timeline. And when I stop, it'll go back to the center. Now, if I go back to the Timeline Preferences panel, go to Page Scroll, which is what it was on before, and I do that same thing, go straight to the beginning, you'll notice that when it hits the edge of the page, it just goes forward. And that's the page scroll. And then finally, if I go all the way back to the beginning again, go to Preferences, Timeline. If I do smooth scroll, what that's going to do is it's basically just going to keep it right at the center. So the playhead never really moves across the timeline visually. However, it is moving forward. I personally like to keep it on page scroll. I've just gotten used to it, and in my head it seems to make the most sense. But you can go ahead and use whatever option works for you. The final thing we'll go over is the Memory Preferences tab. So under Preferences, you can go to Memory. Here you can allocate the amount of RAM reserved for your Adobe applications. You'll notice that right now I have 64 gigs of RAM installed, and there are 6 gigabytes of that reserved for other applications. They have some optimized rendering settings. You can do it for memory, or you can do it for performance. It's important to note that video editing software uses a lot of your computer's resources, so it's good to leave this option at performance, and it's good to allocate a lot of the installed RAM to your editing applications, especially if you're going to be going in and out of Premiere, After Effects, Photoshop. All those are going to be using a lot of RAM. You're not going to want to be allocating a lot of the extra RAM to other outside applications while editing. Now, I would go ahead and explore the Preferences tab, just so that way you get familiar with what options are available. Really, you can change pretty much anything in Premiere, which is great. You can add playback monitors if you want to have a monitor which simply just plays back what's on your program monitor on a full screen. It's great if you have 3 screens, or if you have 2 screens, you just want to have one that you're working off of, and you want to have one that just acts as a program monitor. You can have the media cache being sent to somewhere else, so that way you can more efficiently utilize your hard drives. You can set your label defaults, so after you've set your label colors, you can go ahead and select what the defaults will be over here. So there's just a lot of options here. It's great to explore. The nice thing about Premiere is it's very intuitive. There's a lot of support online, so you don't really have to be afraid of exploring what there is available in this program. So that about wraps up our lesson on the Adobe Premiere Preference panel. Next, we'll just go into some basic tools when working with audio, so you can get a grasp of the audio interface and what Premiere has in regards to that. Anyway, this is VideoFort Charlie signing off. Until next time.